then how could you tell me that that's wrong? Isn't the real issue spirituality? And if I get my spirituality from a Coke bottle, how could you be so judgmental as to tell me that no, you need Jesus Christ and not the Coke bottle?
You're saying that Christianity is more valid than other religions because the evidence points to it being true, but then how can you have faith in it?
Okay, good.
I'm a materialist in that I believe in the unjust persecution of the righteous in order to further my own material gains. Now, as an evil person, what would be the role of Jesus in my life?
What is your response to people who say that Jesus was a great teacher, he taught lots of moral, ethical things, but they just don't believe all of that business about him being the Son of God and saving people and stuff?
My opinion, or my question is that do you feel that everything other than Christianity is bunk?
So, for instance, if God teaches that he is just, but he commits unjust acts, such as sending somebody to hell without giving him a chance for redemption, ever, should I conclude that that Bible does contradict itself and is invalid?
Sure.
When students challenge Christianity, Cliffe Knechtle doesn't flinch. In this powerful exchange, he explains why Jesus stands above all others and what true spirituality really means. It's not about religion, it's about truth. Get ready for answers that go deeper than debate.
How do you distinguish the faith of a Christian who said Jesus is God and the faith of a member of Heaven's Gate who committed suicide and said, we're going to heaven with that alien ship?
You bet. This gentleman asks, how do you distinguish between the faith of a follower of Christ from the faith of someone who said we're going to go to heaven in that spaceship?
Are you familiar with Heaven's Gate?
Right, you bet. Whenever anybody says to me, Cliff, it doesn't matter what you believe, just as long as you're sincere, I have a strong disagreement with them. The validity of faith is not determined by sincerity or genuineness. Rather, the validity of faith is determined by the validity of the object of your faith. If my boy is sick and dying, and I go into the bathroom and pull a bottle of what I think is medicine out of the medicine chest, if I sincerely believe that the contents of this bottle will heal my boy, if in reality the contents of that bottle is poison instead of medicine, I don't care how sincerely I believe that the contents of this bottle will heal my son. If I give the contents of that bottle to my son, he will get worse. He will not improve. Just because someone sincerely believes something does not make it true. Now, what is so sad in our culture is we have overreacted to religious fanatics. And we have said, all right, see those religious fanatics there? The real key is tolerance. And so, because we don't want to be like those religious fanatics, because we want to be tolerant, we have concluded that when it comes to religion, truth does not matter. What matters is sincerity. Just be a nice guy, will you? Just be a fairly emotionally balanced guy. Don't get like those religious fanatics. Now, I deplore religious fanaticism. I am embarrassed by the Crusades, the Inquisition, the Salem witch trials. But just because there are religious fanatics around does not mean that I'm going to throw out truth and say, well, I don't really care what you believe, just be sincere, just be a nice guy. No, I as a human being am concerned about truth, reality. I don't want to live in La La Land. So, the validity of faith is not determined by its sincerity. I would never question the sincerity of a Shiite Muslim who drives a truckload of dynamite in a Marine barracks in Beirut. Incredibly sincere, probably more sincere than I am. But I am convinced the object of the Shiite Muslim's faith is not reliable. That is why I would plead with the Shiite Muslim, the member of Heaven's Gate, consider Jesus Christ. Why? Because the evidence is that Jesus Christ is more reliable than these other options.
So you're saying that Christianity is more valid than other religions because the evidence points to it being true, but then how can you have faith in it?
Okay, good. First point. A little boy once said, faith is believing what you know to be a lie. That is totally false. That's bad faith. Someone else has said to me, Cliff, faith is believing even though there's no evidence. No, that's not good faith, that's gullibility. That's blind faith. Faith, for me, I hope for all of us, is believing based on evidence. But the evidence takes me so far, and the evidence stops, and that's where faith takes over. Example. I don't know this guy real well, but I do know him a little. The reason I trust him with my wallet is because the evidence is he's a reliable guy. There have been people out here this week that I would never do what I just did to him. Because the evidence is they are not reliable. This gentleman and I disagree, but he has treated me very respectfully. I've tried to treat him respectfully. I think I could trust him with my wallet. But there have been some other people out here that I would never trust with my wallet. Why? Because the evidence is he's responsible. The evidence is he's responsible. The evidence is these other rascals out here are highly irresponsible. I believe in Jesus Christ, not because the evidence is he's irresponsible. I believe in Jesus Christ because the evidence is he is highly responsible. He is highly trustworthy. And that's what Paul argues in 1 Corinthians 15. Paul argues, if Jesus Christ is not risen from the dead, we're fools for believing in him. We are fools for believing in him. Why? Because while Jesus was alive, he said, I'm going to die and rise from the dead. And if he didn't back it up by resurrecting from the dead, we're idiots for believing in him. See, I love that. Because that's the way I live my life.
I understand what you're saying, but how can you distinguish between the validity of what... I mean, I've known people of other religions and other philosophies to claim that they're just as valid, and how is one to determine which is more valid or which is more...
Great question. You're right. People of different religions say, buddy, this is the truth. And your great question is, well, what am I supposed to do? You are supposed to study the object of their faith. And you're supposed to, on your own, using the good mind that God has given you, look for evidence of reliability. And if the evidence is lacking, please do not trust. But if the evidence is that this object is reliable, then trust.
I'm a materialist in that I believe in the unjust persecution of the righteous in order to further my own material gains. Now, as an evil person, what would be the role of Jesus in my life?
Okay. Let me see if I've heard you right. You're a materialist, and you believe, as a materialist, in the unjust persecution of the innocent in order to help you get ahead financially.
Yes.
And my point would be to you, I respect your consistency intellectually. I think you're absolutely right. Because there is no God, there are no moral absolutes. Because there is no God, human life is trash. I mean, we're accidental collections of atoms. We can run around saying, I'm value, I have dignity, I am significant. But it's a crock. It's a total crock. In reality, we're hunks of primordial slime evolved to a higher order. So to try and run around and say, I'm the greatest, it's just like Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest. Well, why are you the greatest? Why do you have value? Because I say I do, because I affirm that fact. Well, good for you, but why don't you wake up and smell the coffee? Reality is we're all accidents.
What I want to know is, how can I use the wisdom of Jesus to really help me get ahead and abuse everyone else around me?
Well, obviously, you and Jesus have some major disagreements. Obviously, Jesus insists that people have an innate value. So you and Jesus are not going to have a good time together. And obviously, Jesus warns that you're going to have an eternity that's not going to be any fun. So I would encourage you to reconsider. Yes, ma'am.
What is your response to people who say that Jesus was a great teacher, he taught lots of moral, ethical things, but they just don't believe all of that business about him being the Son of God and saving people and stuff?
All right, this woman asks, how do you respond to the person who says, I believe that Jesus was a great moral teacher, but I cannot accept anything else? My point to that person is, I am very, very concerned about your mind. It doesn't seem to me you're thinking straight. Yes, Jesus taught some nice teachings. But then, after teaching some nice teachings, Jesus looked into people's faces and said, if you believe in me, you're going to heaven. If you reject me, you're going to hell. Now let's get one thing straight. He is no longer a nice, good teacher. He's either speaking the truth, or he's an incredible manipulator who, lacking the persuasive skill to motivate his listeners to follow his teachings, dangles them over a hell to try and motivate them to obey his teachings. How on earth can you conclude that he's a good teacher? If I have a professor who gives me good teachings all semester long and then before the final says, oh, by the way, if you get below a 90, I will personally see to it that you are expelled. He's not a good teacher. The guy's a crass manipulator. Furthermore, if Jesus Christ is a good teacher, then certainly he would not be mistaken about his identity. That is a rather central part of a human being. And if Jesus is such a good teacher, then why did he have the audacity, why was he so out of touch with reality to claim that he was actually God in human form? And why was he such an egomaniac that he claimed that his death on the cross is the vehicle through which God forgives us and gives us eternal life? I mean, are those the qualities of a good teacher? Not as I would define good teacher. So therefore, for someone to conclude that Jesus was a good teacher and nothing more flies in the face of so much of what he said.
What your opinions on spirituality is. My personal opinion on it is that you do need some sort of spiritual feeling inside to make you feel completely whole. It could be, worshiping that Coke bottle there, or, worshiping some book somewhere. Because every religion has a different book that tells, their truth. And my question is that do you feel that everything other than Christianity is bunk?
Okay. If I tell you, all right, the question this woman asked is, if I feel that this Coke bottle brings me spiritual peace and life after death, then how could you tell me that that's wrong? Isn't the real issue spirituality? And if I get my spirituality from a Coke bottle, how could you be so judgmental as to tell me that, no, you need Jesus Christ and not the Coke bottle? Okay, now, my point is, ma'am, if you tell me that that Coke bottle is going to give you eternal life, life after death, I am genuinely concerned that you're getting ripped off. Because I myself am convinced that that Coke bottle, I don't care how much meaning you give it, cannot give you life after death.
But see, the thing is that you could replace the word Coke bottle with Jesus Christ, and it's still the same argument for a lot of people.
Oh, I'm aware of the fact that many people view Jesus on the level of a Coke bottle. I'm totally aware of that fact. I'm convinced they are absolutely wrong, but that doesn't change their belief. But now, as a searcher after truth, as someone who does funerals, I as a pastor have to do funerals, and when I'm standing next to a grave and the guys are kicking dirt back in on the box, a very real question to me is, are we ever going to see this person again? And I'm convinced a Coke bottle's not going to be able to get the job done in terms of seeing the person again. But when I study Jesus Christ, examine his life, his teachings, his death, and then his resurrection from the dead, I'm confronted by evidence that indeed he can give us life after death. And that resurrection is crucial in terms of evidence.
But then again, all of that evidence is based off of faith. And based off of faith that book that you read this evidence from is actually true. And I mean, we can even replace the Coke bottle with Buddhism or something like that, which is a different religion that has a completely different book of evidence, and you still got the same argument. So what I'm asking is that, do you believe so strongly that Christianity is the answer? Or, and that all these other people that have different beliefs, and not to take it on a, a real comical level, but, are incorrect?
Okay, The evidence for Jesus Christ has nothing to do with my faith. The evidence for Jesus Christ is found in the historical narrative of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. People saw Jesus live, they heard him teach, they saw him die, they saw him risen from the dead, and they wrote what they saw. That has nothing to do with my faith. I am not standing out here saying the reason you should believe in Jesus is because I do. In fact, I think you'd be a fool to believe in Jesus because I do. You don't know me from a hole in the wall. So I mean, for you to believe in Jesus because I have faith in Jesus would be foolish. Instead, what I plead with you is, go back to the source documents, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Examine them for yourself. First of all, you're right, you question their historical reliability. So put together some tests that, first of all, you use to determine historical reliability. Apply them to the Gospels and see if the Gospels pass or flunk.
Okay, well, here's a different question, a different angle. What about, say, in some remote, African tribe that's never been exposed to this, and never been exposed to cars or life in society, and have only been exposed to that tribe and their own beliefs that might be worshiping a freaking Coke bottle,
Right.
How can you say that they aren't going to take themselves to their, spiritual afterlife, I mean, everybody's got their own beliefs.
Right. But ma'am, if I believe there's a God, when in reality there is no God, I don't care how intensely I believe God exists, in reality God does not exist. In other words, my belief does not create reality. See, that is a fundamental disagreement I have with a lot of philosophers today. Many philosophers today say, reality is created in your mind. Baloney. Total baloney. The challenge of my mind is to get in touch with what is real. I don't create reality in my mind. If I believe the earth is flat, that doesn't change the earth from being round. If in my mind I don't think you exist, that doesn't change the fact that you exist. If in my mind I think there is no God, that doesn't rub God out of existence. In the same way, if I believe there is a God, but in reality there is no God, that doesn't create God just because I believe it. So the challenge from my mind is, get in touch with reality. Now, how do I get in touch with reality? By proving things? No. There's always a possibility that I'm wrong. I, as a thinking human being, base my life on evidence, and I follow the evidence to the most plausible, the most reasonable conclusion in light of the evidence.
So, for instance, if God teaches that he is just, but he commits unjust acts, such as sending somebody to hell without giving him a chance for redemption, ever, should I conclude that that Bible does contradict itself and is invalid?
Sure. I have a question, sir. Nobody is going to hell because they didn't have a chance for redemption, that's for sure. The only reason people are going to hell is because they reject the opportunity that God gives them for redemption.
But they don't have a chance for redemption anymore once they go to hell.
Once they go to hell, that's correct. They don't have another chance.
If that challenged your thinking or sparked something deeper, don't stop here. Hit that subscribe button for more powerful conversations, truth-filled answers, and real talk about faith, life, and Jesus. See you in the next one.